Hello and welcome to another month of Get Outside St. Tammany, a show dedicated to all things outdoors in St. Tammany Parish. I'm your host, Davis Brister, and joining us is Jan Biggs, who is here to talk with us about a couple of things related to the outdoors, specifically in the Covington area. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And we'll start first with Farmers Market. First and foremost, we always ask, what is your role with the Covington Farmers Market?
I'm the director of the Covington Farmers Market. I see that the whole thing comes together every Saturday, rain or shine, from 8 to 12.
That's not an easy task, is it?
Well, it isn't. I mean, it is and it isn't. It is because I've been doing it for so long. But it isn't because it's a lot to negotiate.
You have to manage people, and you got to manage. Well, you can't manage weather.
No, I can't manage weather, but we've been very lucky with weather. We don't. It seems like it always kind of holds out till 12, 1 o'clock sometimes when rain's reported, But we've had 5 or 6 rainouts in my time doing it, and but never that we had to leave except for right at the Saturday after Katrina.
So how do you manage, and specifically, how do you get people, not necessarily the public coming, but how do you get the providers and also is it just food, or do you have other things that are out there?
Well, our farmers market is a farmers market. It's produce is our main focus, and produce, then plants, and prepared food. After, we don't have any crafts of any sort, except for homemade cosmetics, soaps, stuff like that, but that kind of lends itself to the farmers market. But after that, it's really our main focus is produce, and people have to submit applications. You come pick up an application from us, and you submit the application, and if there's room, you're accepted. But I'm pretty strict about who we accept and who we don't accept. Only in that I don't want it to be too much of one thing. Mm-hmm. If you get too much of one thing, then nobody sells enough. So you got to make it so everybody can make enough money to want to come back. We learned that the hard way back in the beginning.
Do you have waiting lists? Somebody wants
to. We do.
Sell.
We have long waiting lists, really. Because, people always say, what do you need? And I go, I don't really know. You have to tell me, because we've got everything. We've got everything from, right now, we've got peaches and blueberries, and of course, tomatoes have started, and peppers, and all the summer vegetables. And then, we have Latin food and Greek food and health food. And so we've got milk, we've got shrimp, we've got meat, chicken, fresh.
Wow.
Meat, chicken. So we really have a lot. Mushrooms.
You pretty much have covered every. I'm trying to think of what you don't have. We won't go into that. How local is this? In other words, do you accept people who are farmers who are an hour away to come in?
Well,
how does that
most
work?
of our farmers are local. I think the furthest away is probably Folsom and Amite. Amite is the furthest away, because and Tangipahoa, of course, was strawberries, but Amite also was strawberries, and other things, lettuces and things will come from there. But mostly they're local. They're in Bush. They're up Stafford Road. They're in Folsom. That's where most of our produce comes from.
What about the people who come shop? I'm sure you've had conversations. Where do they come from?
Well, I'd say most of them come, well, it's hard to say. Covington, I guess, particularly, but then Mandeville, Folsom for sure. People that want that and want fresh produce, they're there. And they're there early. And some sit around and listen to the music and eat breakfast or hang out, we like to call it. It's a community event. That's my whole purpose behind that thing, is having it for the community.
It's an experience. I mean, the food is fresh and local, which is a big deal,
right.
But it's also the experience.
It's the experience. And that's what I think my main focus is, to make sure that it's a real community, something that I think a lot of communities are losing. So we set up tables and chairs. We have a band every single week. We usually have a little cooking demonstration every single week. There's stuff there. People eat pupusas with eggs on top for breakfast, or they get a muffin from the baker, or whatever they really like to eat and sit and listen to the music. Or there are others that come and get hit and run, as we always say. They get what they want and they go and get on with their day.
Where is this farmer's market?
It's on the side lawn of the police department, 609 North Columbia.
And what time does the market?
8 to 12. But we don't. You can come. The vendors are setting up by 7 o'clock. And we don't ring a bell. We don't. You can come
if they want to stay later. I'm sure.
Right, but mostly they're out of there by noon. But
how big is this farmers market?
Well, I'd say we have between 40 and 50 vendors, depending on the time of year. Right now, of course, is when big surge. We have everything. You know, honey, everything. You know. And so there are a lot of vendors right now, and just a lot to buy right now.
How important is something like a farmer's market to the vendors?
Well, most of these vendors, I mean, it can't be their full-time job, but but for some it is their full-time job. We've got the bakers and most of the farmers, it's their full-time job. And so it's real important. And it's a way that they can sell their produce at retail rather than, you know, have to sell to a middleman. And
right.
You know, so and none of them have huge farms. We're talking about anywhere from an acre to 17 acres. They're not huge farms, so they're pretty. I think it's changed. I think that's why there's so many people growing produce now, because I think it's changed between restaurants and farmers markets. You know, making it available.
Well, so it's almost going back to the way it was.
Right, exactly.
At some point, it's the experience. And
right.
Beats maybe going to the grocery store, even though we're not anti-grocery store.
No, of course not. And the fact is, what the difference is that it was picked yesterday.
Yeah.
Anything you get at the market, it was picked on Friday.
Yeah.
So your eggs were collected that week. You know, everything is fresher. It's fresher than you can mostly get it at any farm, at any grocery store. You know.
Before we move on to the next event, if someone is interested, so we know if I want to come shop, I know what to do. What if I want to be a vendor? What do I need to do?
Call me, of course, at the Covington Farmers Market, and we have applications. I really don't put the applications online. I've learned through experience, it's best to come pick up the application.
Where is that?
And it's at 609 North Columbia.
Okay.
And on Wednesday, you can come to the trailhead. We have a small Wednesday market. It's not real big. It's, you know, probably about 10 vendors. It's mostly like a little lunch. You know, people come and eat lunch, and so it's mostly that. And but there's produce there, and right now we have some blueberries and. But and you can pick up an application on Wednesday too. But the Wednesday market's tiny. It's just never grown to be what the Saturday market is.
Got it. Okay. Good deal. So next event, completely separate, Sunset at the Landing, which is I think that's an official City of Covington deal. But you're also responsible for that. You're a multitasker, multi-purpose. Multi-talented lady.
Well, I don't know about the talent, but I do have my fingers in a few things. But it's the third Friday of every month, and it's from March through October. And we try to keep that as local as we can between here and New Orleans.
Yeah.
You know, and Heritage Bank of St. Tammany is our main sponsor. City of Covington, of course, a sponsor, and then I buy the beer for the musicians, for the farmers market, you know. But anyway, and pay for other things. But that's
can't get musicians without beer. Is that what you're saying?
That's pretty much what I'm saying.
Especially in outside in the summer.
Yes, exactly. That's pretty much what I'm saying.
Where is this concert?
It's at the Landing in at the foot of Columbia Street, the old Columbia Street Landing. It's a beautiful little park. It's just set up for a little stage and a few benches, but mostly you bring your own lunch, dinner, or you know, refreshments, blanket, chairs, whatever. Sometimes we have a food truck up at the top of the hill, and we're trying to get that more. We used to like it to be a way to come into Covington and go eat, you know, come listen to some music and then go to the restaurants. But now it's you know, things have changed so much, so we have a food truck when we can.
What kind of bands do you get?
Well, we don't get your ordinary bands. I always say we don't get the bands that go to festivals. We tend to get more New Orleans. I never know how to.
Music,
no, well, we have a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But it's more towards a jazz venue. Though we also will have a Cajun or country, or we usually have two bands. The first one will be a small band that opens the show, and the next one will be, like this month, we'll have Carl LeBlanc, who's with the Preservation Hall. Band, and he does a lot of things. They're usually musicians that play side with some of the major stars,
Yeah.
but they're themselves stars, and we give them an opportunity to show their bands. So Carl will be, there's no telling what Carl's going to bring, and it's always a little different, but he's a
So you have a recurring guest.
It's always different, and we try not to do the same ones every year. We always try to have somebody different.
Yeah. What kind of turnout do you get? Especially in the summer
Well,
months?
in the summer, 300 or so people. It's not huge because we don't, like I said, we don't get those festival bands.
You don't want it to be Jazz Fest anyway.
No, I don't. We really don't. We want it to be a surprise, is what we kind of like it to be, and something you wouldn't hear just anywhere. You'd have to go into some of the clubs in New Orleans to hear what you hear at the Landing.
Is it free?
It is free.
Completely free.
Completely free. So you bring your own, like I say, you bring your own refreshments and chairs or whatever.
What and how long what are the hours? I guess.
Okay, it's from 6 to 9, and the first band comes on at 6, and the next band, depending on how we do it, it's never the same. But sometimes it comes on an hour later, sometimes an hour and a half later, and it's over at 9, and we do sell water. $1.
That's the only thing for so you have a food truck, you have water, and
that's it. Because it's not about that. It's really, again, it's a community,
same experience.
Same experience for the people can come down there. Half the time I hear people say, "I wonder who's playing tonight." They don't even know. They're just coming to be by the park and by the water, and it's a beautiful location. Every band that comes there wishes they could go somewhere else and do that. I mean, it's really a great place.
Unique experience. Well, that's
it really
great.
Is.
Well, congratulations on all your ventures, and good luck as we head into the deep of the summer.
Okay, well, rain, shine, hot or cold.
You'll be there. Huh?
I'll be there.
Jan, thank you very much.
So
We'll
nice.
see you back again some other time on this show. Appreciate
all right.
it.
Thank you so
and
much.
We'll see you right after this break.
Be safe to keep your distance until the
No secret that makes you smile.
reliable sources say that chicken soup has found their way out of the zoo. Dangerous, but they are returning.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
And welcome back to the show. And as always, every month we have the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries along with us. And we have two guests, Jonathan Winslow, Matt Duplessis. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're the first. We've had probably, we're trying to guess, 20 to 25 guests, and you're going to be the first one to do a demonstration for us. So we're looking forward to that at the end. We always start, what are your titles? And then we'll get into what we're talking about.
I'm a biology supervisor for Inland Fisheries District 8 area, and this is
Jonathan Winslow. I'm a biologist underneath Matt. Matt is my boss. We work out of Lacombe in District 8 for inland fisheries, and we are tasked with basically
monitoring the
properly.
freshwater.
Yeah, go ahead.
Monitoring the freshwater fish population throughout our district.
Where's the district covered?
He's gonna have
The
to tell
easiest
you
way
the
to explain
parishes.
it is from Interstate 55 east.
Got it.
and all the way to the coast on the freshwater fish.
Big district.
Very big.
District, yes.
Very diverse too.
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. Not only in fish, but in people.
Very true.
Very true.
Very true. I have lived on both sides.
So to talk about what we're here to talk about today are artificial reefs, and you actually build these things. So what are they? What are they good for, and what are they used for?
Go ahead. You can start it off.
The main thing they're good for is providing cover and habitat for most of your game fish, and
They provide a substrate for what's called periphyton to grow, and periphyton is basically just a community of algae that starts basically the bottom of the food chain. And while fish like bass, crappie, and bluegill will use this as cover, the main thing that we put them in for is to start the bottom of the food chain, because these algae provide the bottom of the food chain for the smaller fishes and invertebrates to feed on, which in turn attracts the bigger fish. So yes, these structures do indeed attract bigger fish, but indirectly, if that makes any sense.
If they weren't, if y'all didn't have artificial, what would you know? It just sheds a light for somebody who knows nothing about biology or this. It's pretty interesting. If you didn't have these, what kind of issues would be out there?
There's just, so you would have trouble with recruitment and development of small fish, young fish into older fish, because these fish wouldn't have anywhere to hide. Right. A lot of these smaller fish, these prey fish, count on these areas to hide in, and without this structure, there's really no place for them to hide, and they'll get swept up by the game fish.
the more areas you have, like artificial reefs or any kind of other natural structure you have in your pond, it'll increase your forage basis, which is your small fish. So it gives a forage food for your bigger fish, your larger fish, to even get larger.
Yeah.
There's the potential for an imbalance of fish within your pond.
Why is that important to have a balance?
That's a good question.
Hard to say.
Yeah, that's tough to say. I'm sure there's a proper answer, but it's important. I mean, just in nature, if you look at it, there's always a balance. You know, that's even, you can look at something like an invasive fish. If an invasive fish comes in and destroys that balance, well, one fish tends to take over, and the other one
You start having issues with, not extinction. I don't know if fish can be extinct.
Well, they'll just be suppressed.
Yeah.
One species will get suppressed.
If you don't have certain types of structure in your pond and you get an imbalance and you have way more bass than bluegill, your forage base is really down, so your bass will not grow to a size. They'll get skinny, and you get more and more bass, and they'll get stunted.
Excellent.
And they won't grow.
Yeah.
So you want to have a good balance, so you have forage fish and your predator fish,
Right.
to where you have a good balance and everything grows at the right rate.
How do we benefit? Who can benefit from these reefs besides the fish?
That's a good question. So anyone, literally anyone who has access to the water body that you're putting these in. So for instance, we have, LDWF has around 70 to 80 freshwater reefs throughout the state, and those are considered public. So anyone with a fishing license can utilize and benefit from these. The other thing is these are great for private ponds and, say, like neighborhood ponds. Mm-hmm. If neighborhood HOAs want to get involved and help their pond management out, they can put these in, and their neighborhood and their private
Whoever has
private
access to them.
stakeholders can use them. Yeah. So there's public and private. You know, we can show them how to do. We take a lot of phone calls for pond management. This is one of the things we recommend.
Yeah.
So
my assumption is that the reef of the pond in the homeowners association is smaller than those that you put out.
Correct. And
so how do you go about, you know, there are dimensions you look at depending on the size of the body of water?
yes, you just take it into account. I don't think there's any specific calculation.
No.
You just kind of whatever your availability is as far as your materials and your time.
Yeah. The more structure you have in the pond, the more area you have for surface area you have for the periphyton to grow, and it just compounds from there on. So you don't want to fill the whole pond up with structure, but the more you put, the better off you are.
Yeah.
And the fish like bass, crappie, and bluegill really like to use the perimeter of these. So while they, like I said before, they are attracted to structure, they float around the perimeter of these structures looking for their prey that are all bunched up inside the structure.
What are there specific types of fish, prey fish, that are attracted to these structures typically?
Not necessarily. I mean, any small fish, or especially juvenile fish, are attracted to these structures. They kind of hold tight to their structure and kind of watch their back.
And as far as game fish goes, most of your bass species, your largemouth bass, your spotted bass, and some of the streams and stuff that have some type of structure, they're oriented to it. Your crappie are really oriented to structure, and some of the catfish species are oriented to structure.
Yeah. I want to go back to the paraphyton word. I know it's not a word that a lot of people will hear. Say if you take a golf ball out of a golf course pond that's been in there for a month, okay, it's going to have some growth on it, some green kind of slimy. That's paraphyton, and that's what these small fish and invertebrates, they flock to, which in turn gets these bigger fish to come around.
Maybe another question hard
Yes,
to
sir.
answer. What makes a fish attracted to that? Is it see something, smell? What?
Well, that's their food source.
Okay. Well, yeah, you answered that question.
That's their food source. That's correct.
Bottom of the food chain.
That's correct.
Who makes these? Do you guys make them? Can the public make them, or do you have to approve what is being made?
Combination of both. So we like to tell, when we take pond calls, we like to describe how to make them. We even have pamphlets on how to make them. I want to give a reference to Sean Kenny. Sean Kenny is he's our structure guy, and he gave us a lot of this information and helped us out. And he has a lot of information about building structures and different types of structures. And he's worked on Toledo Bend, which is probably, it's probably the leader in freshwater reefs. So
is he a Louisiana guy?
correct,
Yeah,
correct.
he
He
works-
works
with you guys?
out of Lake Charles.
Okay.
Yes, he's a biologist manager in Lake Charles.
Yeah. Okay. You brought pictures. Always love pictures.
Yes,
We're actually, again,
yes.
we mentioned the demonstration. In looking at the photos, it looks like there's obviously different kinds of reefs.
That's correct.
Take us through some of these. What are we looking at?
Okay, so
here's one,
that-
Toledo Bend Lake
That's
Association boat.
see, mentioning Toledo
That's
Bend.
one that they put out in Toledo Bend. That's actually called a hedgehog.
Okay, I get that. I won't have to ask. So what makes this different from, say, here's another one we've got, Habitat Range?
That's
or
Habitat Barge. That's
what's the
deployment.
difference in the hedgehog and what looks like an actual barge?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just the materials. The shape
that
and
simple.
the structure is not. I mean, it's not necessarily going to affect a whole lot about who goes there or which fish goes there and which fish doesn't. It's literally just about the materials and the size.
Yeah. I mean, a stupid question. Is there any rhyme or reason back on the Toledo Bend picture? Is there any rhyme or reason to how these poles, or for lack of a better word, go up?
The orientation is not very important. The amount is. So for each one of these air pipes,
Yeah.
that's surface area that paraphyton can grow on. And that's what you're looking for. The more surface area, more paraphyton, the better it is.
I would think this is kind of a fun part of the job, or whoever getting to put these different structures
Absolutely.
together. Do you ever examine them once they go in
They
the
do.
water?
We have some very kind
That's
of
a
not great pictures, but the water we're dealing with isn't crystal clear.
Right,
but
right.
that right there is a largemouth bass.
from a scuba picture
Scuba
from
picture, that's correct.
that's in Toledo Bend. That picture was taken.
Awesome, and that's obviously around one of the reefs.
Yep.
What's the again? Maybe ask you something you don't know. How big can these get?
As big as Sean Kenny wants them to get.
Yeah,
As you can see, these ones that are being deployed,
they're
they
not
are
small.
large.
It all
Yeah.
depends on the time and the material you have to put into it.
If you look
Looking at another picture.
at this one,
Yeah.
that's a catfish hanging out on one of those pallet. So on
What kind
this one, so
I see.
so
Okay.
these pallets here,
Yeah.
a lot of them were donated. But you see how kind of fuzzy it is?
Mm-hmm.
That's the paraphyton growing on there, and that's a catfish hanging out in the structure.
Really interesting. Really interesting. Well, it's about demonstration time, so
Yep.
we're gonna actually let you guys break free and show us how to put one of these together. And I joke because I said, You know, you said it takes about a minute to put together. It would take me about an hour, and I'd still mess it up. So we'll let you do it. I'm not demonstrating today, but let's go see how you put it together. Oh yeah, and you're about to mention something that I'm supposed to. Tell me about the Map Explorer.
So if you go to our website, wlf.louisiana.gov, there you can find an interactive map that tells you where every one of these freshwater reefs can be found along, on a map and with GPS coordinates. So if you go to our website and click on the Public Areas and Facilities tab and go to Outdoor Explorer Map Tool, and then the next tab will be Get on the Water tab. And then you can, go ahead.
And these will be all the freshwater reefs that Wildlife and Fisheries has put out.
These are all public.
Got it. Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, select freshwater reefs on the map when you can, and it'll pull up a bunch of green dots, and that's where all of our reefs are.
Good deal. Awesome stuff. All right, let's get to work.
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Materials that we have here today for this one, which is called a spider block. We have just a normal cinder block and a bunch of spare air tubing that we had around our office. And the main design that you have is you just take the air tubing and cut it in different lengths.
Nothing specific on the lengths, just kind of
all different sizes.
Feel like. Don't get caught up on these exact materials. We're using a cinder block. You can also use a bucket and fill it with cement, with Quikrete. With this one, if we were deploying it in water, we would get these set and then pour some Quikrete in the cinder block holes to really get it set, lay it on some visqueen for a day, and at that point, once it was dry, then we would go deploy it. I think we didn't mention that these work great in clusters, maybe 10 feet away from each other.
And then once you have them all in, you kind of just move them around to
kind of get however you really want it.
And then you would mix up a little bit of Quikrete and pour it in the holes to hold your pipes in place.
Let it set, let it dry.
And then you can bring it out and deploy it in the water.
And that's it. It's pretty simple stuff. Anybody can do it.
All right, Jonathan, I changed my mind. I think I could have done that in a minute or less as well. You're right, anybody could do it. We thank you, as always, for joining us on this edition of Get Outside St. Tammany. We'll see you next month. Enjoy your summer.